Hello, this is Joe from Nerd in Korea. We are starting our deck check in number 6, looking at Lathril, Blade of the Elves today. Again, this is all about reviewing decks and looking over decks. I usually do budget stuff. This is very much not budget, so again, yeah. This is kind of like the Prime Elf Kindred Commander, I think. So, the last week we did like a Kumena budget deck, so that's kind of the Prime Merfolk, so I feel like this is a good follow-up to that. Anyway, so she is 2 Golgari, which is black-green. She has Menace, and whenever she deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green elf tokens. So if you can create a lot of tokens with her by doing damage, that is very helpful, especially with her second ability. You can tap her to tap 10 untapped elves you control. Each opponent loses 10 life and you gain 10 life. That's not really a win con in itself, but it can really start kind of, yeah, tilting the board, I guess you might say. Anywho, yeah, 2/3 for her. She's a 2/3, I mean, yeah. So this deck is, on the TCG player price, which is usually lower, is $641.53. I want to point out that this is an actual deck. Like, a friend of mine has this deck. He plays with it regularly. It's a real deck. I think that can make quite a bit of difference in how it's built. So yeah, it is real. And this deck was made by the same person who made the Tiamat deck from the first episode. If you saw the first episode, I believe also the, what was it? No, yeah, okay, never mind, okay. Okay, so she is a Gruul commander, and she's all about elf kindred. So if you can get enough elves on the board, you can do a whole lot, really. So, yeah. Elf synergy is very important, and if you can make 9 or more elves, it should be 10, but anyway. Yeah, because I was counting her, but you do have to tap her to activate the ability, so you actually need 11 elves, including her. So this lets you lean on opponents, right? This isn't like a tap and I win the game, this is like a kind of push them down gradually kind of thing. Or very quickly if you have untap effects. Key cards. So this deck focuses on getting the most out of the commander. It has elf typo and several effects that give card or mana advantage. Mana and cards are the two main, or card draw I should say, are kind of the two main issues you need to resolve with the deck first. If a deck is lacking either one of those, it kind of just doesn't work at all, right? So if you don't have those two things sorted, you kind of have to go back to square one. Once those things are taken care of, you can kind of build the rest on top of it. So yeah. We're going to look at some elves now, which are obviously very important in this deck. Galadrim Ambush. So create X 1/1 green elf creature tokens, where X is the number of attacking creatures. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt this turn by non-elf creatures. So a very big one, right? You're basically making it so only elves can do damage on one combat, which is huge. And yeah. It doesn't just prevent you from taking damage, it prevents the creatures that are not elves from doing damage. If you just want to, like, whatever blockers you have up will automatically not take damage and only do damage. It's pretty huge. And also making a bunch of tokens. Like, the last point I want to make about this one is that it is the number of attacking creatures is the number of green 1/1 elf tokens you make. They don't have to be attacking you. It doesn't care who's getting attacked. It just cares how many attackers there are. So if one player is attacking another player with a whole bunch of creatures, you can use this and just make a whole bunch of tokens because someone else is getting attacked. That's pretty awesome. Prowess of the Fair. Alright, so whenever another non-elf or non-token elf is put into your graveyard from play, you may put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token into play. So basically, if a non-token elf dies, you make a token elf. Pretty useful. And it's an enchantment as well, so it's not going to die. Board wipes are one of the things you need to worry about with this deck, and this turns into kind of an advantage. Elven Ambush. Create a 1/1 green elf creature token for each elf you control. Again, if you use this first ambush card and then the Galadrim ambush card, make a whole bunch of elves and then cast this, double your elves. Also at instant speed, right? Both these are at instant speed, so you can do it during someone else's turn and just be set up for your turn to like start tapping and knocking their life totals down. Roaming Throne. The main thing we care about on this one is the attack trigger, right? So, as Roaming Throne enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. If a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. So again, if Lathril does combat damage, she's going to make those token creatures, and then you're going to like double the number of tokens she's making, which is going to add up very quickly. Especially with something like Parallel Lives, right? If an effect would put one or more tokens onto the battlefield under your control, it puts twice that many tokens into the battlefield into your control instead. Especially with some of the Anthem effects we have in this deck, Lathril is probably going to be able to do more than 2 of her, her base damage is only 2, she's going to be doing quite a bit more, I think. So doing even 5, I think, is a conservative guess. And yeah, if she does the 5, Roaming Throne can double it to 10, and if Parallel Lives is out, you got 20. That's a lot of elf tokens, oh my. Anthems. Yeah, anthems are very important in this deck because we are making a lot of like kind of lower attack creatures. And also I think the deck in general has a lot of lower ones because we're keeping the mana cost down very low. So yeah, kind of the side effect of that. And I am hoping that random car alarm that keeps going off isn't on the video. It's making me crazy, but anyway. Anthems, Elvish Warmaster, so 5 green. This is pricey, right? 7 for like a 1-turn ability. That's a lot. Elves you control get +2/+2 and gain Death Touch until end of turn. If you've got like 20 elves, all with +2/+2 and Death Touch, you can just like wipe out someone else's board, basically, right? If they want to block you, they're just going to lose everything. So yeah, it's a very good disincentive to let you they probably will take the damage instead, as long as it isn't like lethal. Elvish Archdruid. Again, this is only a +1/+1 for other elves, but yeah. Add 1 mana to your mana pool for every elf you control. That's just a lot of mana in this deck, right? Allosaurus Shepherd. This can't be countered, which is nice. And green spells you control can't be countered. You got a lot of green spells in here. And for 4 green, again, 6 is a lot. Each elf you control has base power 5/5 and becomes a dinosaur in addition to its other types. Your 1/1s are now 5/5s with whatever other Anthem effects there are. Oh, that's a whole lot. Again, if you're making like 20 in a turn, which is not super hard to do, you can come at them with, what is that? It turns into 100 damage you can have on the battlefield just from tokens. Oh boy. Crater Hoof Behemoth. I think this is probably the most well-known one. So when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. Obviously, one of our win cons here. Sorry, that car alarm keeps going off. I think that Niebuhr's car alarm goes off a lot. Anyway, Izuri, Renegade Leader. So this lets you regenerate another elf. Also very good, and this is another Anthem effect for 5 this time. +3 green though. Elf creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. Alright, Craterhoof and this are very similar in that they both grant trample to just everything, the whole board, right? Craterhoof is probably going to give you a higher bonus to your attack and defense, but +3 is nothing to like, you know, that's no slouch there. Also, Izuri's ability you can do every turn, whereas Craterhoof, you need some way to like flash it or something to keep doing it. Okay, card draw. Beast Whisperer, I think a very, pretty standard one here. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. I always forget about this card when I'm building decks, and then I remember, I'm like, oh, I should have included this one. Elven Chorus, 3 and a green. So you may look at the top card of your library at any time. That is already such a good ability. Like, just being able to know what's coming can make all the difference in the world. If you're gonna like do something where you shuffle your deck or anything like that, knowing what's next is like just amazing. Like, you don't end up like shuffling that really useful thing away or whatever it may be. And yeah, anyway, you may cast creature spells from the top of your library, also great, and add 1 mana of any color. All your creatures now are mana dorks, and they can create any mana, any color of mana. Guardian Project, so whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, basically draw a card. It has to not have the same name as another creature, but your non-tokens can't have the same name in Commander because of the Singleton rule, so yeah. Basically, play or cast a non-token creature, get a card. Scamfar Avenger, whenever another non-elf or non-token elf or berserker you control dies, you draw a card and lose 1 life. This can be very good. Again, almost like a board wipe discouragement card, so I always like those. Elvish Harbinger, finally. When it comes into play, you may search your library for an elf card, reveal it, shuffle your library, and put that card on top. Kind of a downer, it doesn't go to your hand, but still very, very useful. For only 2 and a green, be able to get whatever elf you want. That can be a win con, that can be all kinds of things. Alright, the plan. So how does the deck play? As usual, our first step is mana ramp. I think it's always mana ramp. Step 2, more elves. We covered some of the elves already, but we're going to talk about more of them. And finally, step 3, the win cons. Alright? So our mana-based cards, there are too many in this deck for me to cover all of them, so I picked like 5 of the most important ones. Alright, Elven Chorus we talked about already. The main thing there is creatures you control have it makes everything into a mana dork that can create any color of mana, right? Arbor Elf, untap target forest. I think this one is underrated. It is such a good one. Remember, you can have like biomes and all kinds of things, or triomes. I guess not a triome in this deck, but any land that has the forest keyword, you can use this with. Flare of Cultivation. I actually don't have this card. I wish I did. That car alarm went off again. There was like no noise outside. Every time I start recording, that's right when all of the noise outside the apartment starts. It's like dead quiet around here all the time. And then I start recording and it's like, oh, car alarm. Oh, vacuuming outside. We don't have carpets outside. Someone is vacuuming. I can hear a vacuum. Sure. Why not? Anyway, Flare of Cultivation. You may sacrifice a non-token green creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Oh, wow. So early ramp, you can just sack something. You've got like a green 1 mana creature, just like sack it, get a land instead. So search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards, put 1 into the battlefield tapped and 1 into your hand. The cards that put 1 into your hand, I think a lot of people go, I'd rather have it in the battlefield. True, but remember, you want to hit your land drops, okay? If you're not hitting your land drops, don't worry about ramp. Worry about your land drops, okay? Your land drops are number 1, ramp number 2. Yeah. Growing Rights of Itlamog. Alright, so when it enters the battlefield, you may look at the top 4 cards of your library, reveal a creature card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest in your bottom of your library in any order. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more creatures, transform this, and then it becomes a mana dork, basically. Or it becomes a mana rock, I should say. In Phyrexian Tower, you can add colorless to sacrifice, or you can sacrifice a creature to add 2 black. That's again, you're making all these dork, or all these tokens. I keep wanting to use dork for everything now. You're making all these tokens. Even if you attack with it, you can then sacrifice it and then make it into mana instead. Kind of getting 2 for 1. You don't really have to give up anything for it. More Elves. Copperhorn Scout. This is such a crazy card in this deck. I recently made my Kumena deck. I should have put this in. Actually went back and put it in after, but in the video I don't have this listed, and I did add it since. Alright, so when it attacks, untap each other creature you control. So this is going to just like untap your whole board, and then you can just like go ahead and tap down everything to like do a whole bunch of auto damage. Whoa. Gnawroot Trapper. Pay 1 life, you can add a green mana, and you can only spend that mana to cast an elf creature spell, or target attacking elf you control gains death touch until end of turn. I think this is deceptively good. If another player's worried about you just like up and giving something death touch all of a sudden, they're going to make their blocking choices a lot more carefully, right? They don't want to put up anything that would maybe be the best blocker because it's just going to die. Wirewood Symbiote. Alright, so return an elf you control to its owner's hands, untap target creature. Activate this ability only once each turn. So really, you've got things like Wood Elves in this deck, where you play it, you go get a land, a forest comes into play tapped, so you can return that to your hand and play it again, and basically just keep ramping to turn it into a ramp spell. And untapping lets you, do a whole bunch of damage, which is also nice. Okay, Marwyn the Nurturer. So whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on her. And you can tap her to add an amount of green mana equal to her power. Again, whenever another elf, not non-token elf, just elf, comes in, she's just going to keep stacking up these +1/+1 counters, and then she's going to tap and make that much green colored mana. Okay, I'm really hoping that car alarm you can't hear that, but it's driving me crazy. It's gone off like 5 times now, I think. And finally, Elvish Champion. All elves get +1/+1. Meh. And have Forest Walk. Okay, Forest Walk just gives all your elves the ability to attack and not be blocked if they have a forest. Oh my. Defense. Defense is very important because like board wipes can really upset your game plan. So we want something that can keep your commander alive and keep your board all defended. Heroic Intervention may be one of the best defense cards in the game. For a 1 and a green, permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. I don't think I have this card. I gotta get it. Revitalizing Repast. This can also be a land, which is great. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, gains indestructible until end of turn. For 1 green or black mana, you put a counter on something and make it indestructible. This is all about keeping your commander alive, really. This is a great card for doing that. And yeah, here, Eladamri? Yeah, Eladamri. Lord of Elves. So all elves gain, again, Forest Walk. Very underrated ability. Elves cannot be target of spells or abilities. All of your elves are just not targets anymore. Board wipes still do work, right? Board wipes don't have targets, so any kind of like global or mass effect will hit them. If it doesn't actually target, then it still does work. Anything that is like target removal or something like that, doesn't. So yeah. Golgari Charm. This does a whole bunch of things. The main thing we want it for, though, is regenerate each creature you control. So they use a board wipe and you're like, okay, I'll just bring everything back, right? That's fine. I don't care. So target player, Blessed Respite, target player shuffles the graveyard into their library, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. Again, in combat, if you want to if you're putting up a bunch of blockers and you're like, oh wait, I don't really want to lose them, or even if you don't put up the blockers, you just want to protect yourself, this card makes, again, cancels all combat damage for that combat, and yeah, puts your entire graveyard back into your library. Kind of a crazy combination. Again, that does defend you against mill strategies and things like that too. So it can shut down some strategies that this deck would otherwise be vulnerable to. So this is kind of a 2-for-1 here. Win cons now. So our first win con, basically focusing on the kind of like training your opponents bit by bit. Again, Poison Tip Archer. Reach and Death Touch is always nice. But whenever an opponent dies, or whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. That car alarm went off again. Oh my. I really hope that's not on the video. Anywho. I'm gonna go out there if I hear it again, I think. Anyway, whenever another creature dies, right? Another creature, it's not creature you control, just another creature. So if the board is all loaded up and someone casts a board wipe, they're kind of just like possibly just losing the game for everyone except for you. They're like winning the game for you. It turns board wipes into like your friend. So Damnable Pact and Pact of the Serpent are both cards that basically force people to draw cards and lose life. So really what you want to do is you want to use this to be able to like knock someone out of the game. And if you've been leaning on them and lowering their life total all game, it shouldn't be very hard. Again, you can make so much mana that X can be really, really high. And Pact of the Serpent, I believe, yeah, it's based on you choose a creature type and then however many of those creatures you have, they draw that many cards and lose that much life. Which again could be well over 20 if you go with Elf. So yeah. Definitely can turn the game there. Win con number 2. I think this is not surprising. Crater Hoof Behemoth. So yeah. When it enters, again, +X till end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. Especially, you don't really need this, but if you have Parallel Lives or Galadrim Ambush, we already talked about being able to make just crazy amounts of tokens, right? Get those crazy amounts of tokens out, and then the next turn you cast a Crater Hoof Behemoth and just like basically trample to the win. Alright. Win con number 3. Triumph of the Horde. So until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and infect. Trample and infect. Once again, infect, basically damage they do is in poison counters instead, and if they get 10 or more, they lose the game. gonna add up real quick when you've got just like a huge amount of creatures. Using effects to like boost up damage, the anthem effects kind of thing, is ideal with this, because yeah, if you got anthems out and just get your tokens and then cast Triumph of the Hordes, you just win, right? It's going to end their game. Boreal Druid, so it's add one colorless mana. It is only 1 mana to cast, so that's nice, but I think we can do better. Balaged Recovery. Alright, so for 2 and a green, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. The recursion is very, very nice. For 3 mana, I think we can do better. This can also double as a land, which is also nice, but you know. Fel the Profane. This is another one that is also a land. On its other side, destroy target creature or planeswalker. I would argue you don't need a bunch of extra land drops. I feel like this deck has enough card draw and lands that you don't really need to like maybe choose some cards that aren't really as great if they don't do what you want them to. Anyway, yeah, this just destroys a creature or planeswalker. So removal, not great removal. And a swamp. This is a very green deck. I would prefer something that is not just like, again, the basic land I'm not like hitting on. Again, this is a Judgment Call. Alpha Authority. This is barely replaceable, I think. So anyway, enchanted creature has hexproof and can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. This is just a great commander card, alright? So I very hesitantly put this on a replaceable cards list. I think it's not. This wouldn't be my first choice to replace by a long shot. Okay, Boreal Druid I would replace with Vitalize. Vitalize does not give you mana, but it's going to untap everything. It untaps all of your creatures, which will then, you got probably a few mana dorks at least. This will give you more than one. That car again, oh my. Balaged Recovery. I actually had this in the last video and it said to replace it with the same thing. Verdant Confluence. Verdant Confluence costs 6 instead of 3, so it does cost a lot more, but you can get 3 cards back, or you can put 6 +1/+1 counters on a creature, or you could search for 3 basic lands and put them into play tapped, or you can pick 3 of those, like a +2, a land, or a card back to your hand. You can mix and match them however you want. So, I mean, 6 is a lot, but when you break it down, it's 2 for each effect. It's really like being on 1 card makes it quite ideal, I think. Okay, Fel the Profane. Again, this is destroying a target creature or planeswalker. Tear Asunder is what I'd change this with. It is half the mana cost, and it does have a kicker that would make it the same mana cost, but exile target artifact or creature. So exile rather than destroy, first of all. And if you pay the kicker, exile target non-land permanent. So this can do anything if you pay the kicker. If you're paying the 4, you can exile anything. Not destroy, exile. So exile is an upgrade, and being able to hit more things is an upgrade. The swamp I would replace with Haunted Mire or something else that has the swamp and forest. We've got a few cards in this deck that let you like go out and get a forest and put it into play. It does, like Wood Elves even does not specify a basic land forest. It just says forest. So being able to like go and snap up something that'll give you black or green for something that usually only gets you a green, I think is very worthwhile. There is 1 card, 1 land in this deck already that does have the land types on it, the swamp and forest land types. But yeah, so just to give you 1 more. The Alpha Authority. This is my most, like, I don't know if I would take this out myself, but I'm gonna, like, throw out an idea. Sylvan Offering. I think this is a card that really needs to go in this deck. For X and green. Again, you can make so much mana so many ways. Choose an opponent. You and that player each create XX green tree folk creature tokens. Sure, why not, right? Choose an opponent. You and that opponent player each create X11 green elf warrior tokens. So you're getting double X in tokens, and you do have to give tokens to opponents, but the elf does so much more for you than it does for your opponent. And you can give these to different opponents to not, like, stack up someone's board too much. It just, oh boy. Okay, refocus tactics. I would look at, like, just kind of focusing more on some tactics rather than others, and yeah. Here, I would recommend going with more of an aristocrat strategy. So Mirkwood Bats. Whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. The main thing is creating tokens, right? You're going to create a whole bunch of these elf tokens. Every time you just keep ticking them down. And then you can tap them to, like, do 10 and gain 10. Zulaport Cutthroat. Whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Making that board wipe threat, again, kind of like Poison Tipped Archer, same idea. And whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life on Nadir Nightblade. These last two, Zulaport is a little expensive, I admit, but Nadir's Nightblade, cost-wise and mana cost-wise, are pretty reasonable. Mirkwood Bats is 4, Zulaport is 2, Nadir's Nightblade is 3. Okay, final thought. So this deck is well built around the commander. Like, you can easily, the anthems enhance her ability to make the tokens, and then, yeah, you can also make extra tokens to, like, give her other advantages, and then you can also, have lots of ways to make it so people don't want to block or make blocking pointless or unable to block with Forest Walk. But anyway, block Forest Walk rhymes, that's fun. Anywho, yeah, it takes full advantage of every aspect of the commander and has synergistic mechanics that suit the color, creature type, and its abilities. So yeah, this really does, like, fit the commander very well. It's very well built around the commander. So yeah, these ones are always the hardest when I get to the suggestions part. I have to, like, work. I had to think about stuff for like half an hour when I was making this just to come up with 5 suggestions. Anywho, alright, take it easy.